This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, it is time for the current state of WWE, and no current state of the WWE is bigger than tonight's version of current state, because we are post-Mania. The Raw after Mania is currently going on as we speak, and myself and Anthony have not seen anything past Brock coming out and the tag team match that's going to main event the show is Solo and Roman versus Brock and Cody. Certainly a massive, massive match in which neither Roman or Brock have wrestled on Raw. I don't even know the last time, so we don't know the result of anything past that. But we're here to mostly discuss WrestleMania, and Anthony, welcome back to the show, number one. Number two, overall, what did you think of WrestleMania?
I thought it was pretty good, honestly. I think that we kind of discussed it leading into last week when we did our show, that even though maybe the build for a lot of the matches wasn't where we wanted it to be, we were starting to get excited because of the in-ring, and even matches where you thought that the in-ring stuff would maybe be lacking, like Omos versus Brock, for instance. I think most matches delivered or even over-delivered, like the tag team showcase match. Who saw that blowing it completely out of the water like they did? And I mean, from an in-ring perspective, maybe night two you could poke some holes in it with the women's showcase tag team match or whatever. But I mean, I think from an in-ring perspective here, you have to go close to 9 out of 10, in my opinion. Yes, there were some matches that the story was just lacking so much that it maybe wasn't enough of good in-ring to overcome it. Raw Women's Championship match with Bianca and Asuka probably being the biggest example of that. But I thought they got most of the decisions right. Yes, I think that maybe there were some holes that you could poke in terms of, let's say, overbooking, like the main event that we could get into maybe a bit more specifically. But overall, I would give it a solid A- of a show.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm very close to with you in terms of overall rating. If I was to rate it from an F to an A+, I'd give it an A. Not a perfect show, nearly impossible to put on a perfect show, but probably one of the better WrestleManias that I've seen in a long time. And that's not saying I'm looking at it from a star power perspective. There were no big returns. Okay, Shane McMahon, but he got injured in a leapfrog, and hilariously, and I saw this on someone else's report, and I'm not going to take credit for it, but it's really hilarious, is that with everything Shane has done and nearly killed himself and jumped off of, what gets him is a leapfrog. I mean, out of everything that he's done in his life, which is funny, but also kind of, I feel for Shane. And we'll talk about that match a little bit later with The Miz. But yeah, I'm with you. The women's side of things, I mean, is certainly headlined by Rhea and Charlotte, who you can make an argument had the match of the entire pay-per-view, match of the year candidate, up there with Sheamus and Gunther from Clash at the Castle. I mean, amazing there. And yeah, I mean, I think where the holes were the women's tag team showcase match, not great. Definitely nothing to write home about. Also, Ronda Rousey and Shayna did nothing in that match at all, and I guess that was the purpose, but also kind of really took away from the match. So, I mean, yeah, it wasn't a perfect show. Snoop Dogg, I mean, he is what he is. Overall, like I said, really good pay-per-view, exceeded my expectations, and it shows you what the wrestlers can do even when they're given subpar storytelling going in. They can control what happens in the ring to an extent, and they were able to tell their stories in a way that they wanted to and show what they can really do, even if the story sucks going in. So let's just dive into the main event, because I can't not talk to you about the main event right up front to make sure we have enough time to do this. I'll just toss this to you. When you look at the main event, I know you mentioned that it was overbooked, and I would agree that some elements probably were just kind of, it was a little too much. But what were your thoughts on the booking, the ups and the downs, and ultimately the result of Cody Rhodes losing to Roman Reigns?
Well, the result was 100% the correct one. Like, I was legitimately worried that he was going to win, and not worried in a way that, like, oh, it's going to take the company down a deep, dark path. Like, obviously not. It's just from a subjective and a biased standpoint. I don't know why, but I just cannot stand Cody Rhodes. And I actually thought I was coming around to him during the build to WrestleMania, because I do think that they did a good job of building him as a main eventer. And I could objectively say that he has main event talent. I think that, he's obviously second to none from an in-ring perspective. He's obviously good on the mic. But there's something just so forced and contrived about Cody Rhodes that just grinds my gears the wrong way. And I think what put it over the top for me was when he went to ringside and like hugged his baby and gave his belt to Luke Harper's son. And I was just saying, like, could you just stop doing everything in your power to try and play like the sentimental card? Like, just get over on your own, which he is, to his credit. Like, even tonight, the reaction was very strong for Cody Rhodes. So I admit that me and yourself are in the minority here. But I cannot deal with this guy anymore. And I know that I'm going to have to. And I know that sometime between now and next year's WrestleMania, I almost bet my house on it that he will be world champion. And objectively, I will say that he does deserve it. But he wasn't the guy to dethrone Roman Reigns. Not now, I don't think at any point, but certainly not at WrestleMania. So before I go into the actual match itself, I want to throw it to you before I go down another diatribe. But, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel it all the way I did about his entrance, or, like, how you felt about him going in as opposed to after? Like, where are you at with him?
Now, you see, I'm on the same wavelength as you, but as you're speaking, you're getting me more ramped up about it, because I think I got sucked into the Cody Rhodes cult a little bit. I mean, I wasn't on the side of actually going to an event and cheering for him or buying merchandise for him, but I was kind of like, all right, this guy's got it, right? He's got the in-ring. He's got himself in just phenomenal shape. He's a really good talker. He does look the part, the suits, all that stuff, and he does feel like he belongs, and he doesn't feel like he's a pretender, not a contender. He does feel like he is what he says he is. So that kind of drew me in, and I was starting to soften like you were on the Cody Rhodes babyface character. And then as you start talking about it, maybe I was just so distracted by what the finish could be. I wasn't paying too much attention to the entrance, and I did see him hug his family. And at first, I guess I don't know what the hell I was doing. Maybe I was just so exhausted by that time at the show and going through 2 nights of Mania. But now that I'm reflecting on that specific moment of him hugging his family, which most people go, well, that's nice. He's a family man. But this is what politicians do. Like, he would be a great politician because on camera, you do things to alter the perception of yourself, right? Like, even though behind the scenes you may be the most miserable SOB, when the camera light is on, you you kiss babies, and, you shake hands, and you're just, you're a man's man, and you are just Mr. All-America, right? And that's what Cody is trying to, show us that he is. And so, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, I'm kind of going back down the rabbit hole of him being just insufferable as a babyface. Again, amazing talent, great on the mic, really good in the ring. Gave us a very good match to great match with Roman. Does feel like he belongs. It's just simply he's in the wrong role. And eventually the fans will turn. They have been steadfastly supporting him, and I'm a bit surprised that it has been so overwhelmingly positive for Cody, and great for him, which is, I know you and I are in the minority, but yeah, I'm with you in that I'm starting to now go back down the rabbit hole of him being this ultra sleek, clean cut, happy-go-lucky baby face that is now hugging and kissing his family on camera that we're all supposed to feel, warm and fuzzy inside about.
Yeah, so beyond that, I don't want to spend too much time on it because, like I said, and you acknowledge that, like, he is over with the crowd, and you have to give him that, and you have to acknowledge, no pun intended as far as Roman Reigns goes, but you have to give him credit that he has been over with most of the crowd. But as far as the match goes, obviously these are two of the best in-ring competitors the company has to offer right now, and I think that they really delivered. I think Roman Reigns is on a different planet right now. I think he's in a different stratosphere, which Triple H alluded to in his press conference afterwards. And I am starting more to appreciate Roman Reigns. There was a point last summer, as we talked about here on our show, that I was really starting to sour on him, and it was just all bloodline all the time. I was getting sick of it, and obviously Sammy had a big hand in turning that around. But it's almost like it's coming full circle with me on Roman Reigns, where I'm saying just like, man, like maybe they were onto something all this time, and he really is that special, and he really does deserve this 1,000 days, because it's not just his look, it's not just the way that he competes in the ring, but it's just like the facial expressions, that his ring psychology. Like, this guy really is the only megastar I believe that this company has to offer. And last night, when he won, and it was like 3 WrestleManias in a row consecutively of the same way of it going off the air, it went from like my feelings of it to, pardon me, at like Elimination Chamber being so resentful, to almost just an appreciation because of how good of a match he had with Cody. And that's also a testament to Cody's in-ring ability. I do think, as I texted you late last night, that it was very overbooked. I'm not a big proponent of outside interference in WrestleMania main event. Like, for me, a WrestleMania main event should be Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley, and we could even talk about that after if you want. But like, it should be just mano a mano, or in that case, woman versus woman, no outside interference. And if there is, maybe a bit minimal. Like, even the Rock versus Austin match at WrestleMania 17, which is considered the biggest WrestleMania and the biggest main event in the history of professional wrestling by many, I still always think that that Mania match is a bit tainted because of the heavy interference from Vince McMahon. And I think last night, you have a total of, if you want to count Paul Heyman distracting the ref, you have a total of 6 outside bodies interfering here, with Sami Zayn, the Usos, Kevin Owens, Solo, and Paul. So, I mean, I did really like it. Obviously, these guys are amazing in-ring talents. They blew it out of the water in terms of what they did individually and together. I just thought that WWE went back to the well one too many times here with the ref bump, so many people getting involved, and just like basically like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens having like a full-on brawl with the Usos, I just thought it was a bit too above and beyond, but still a very good main event.
Yeah, that they could have minimized a little bit of the formula that we've seen over and over and over for 2.5 years of that same bloodline interfering. They do it behind the referee's back, or when the referee takes a bump, someone's coming out. Like, I agree. Like, WrestleMania, specifically the WrestleMania main event, should have a little bit more respect. And that's not to say they're disrespectful, but it just has its own feeling, its own spot, where very rarely should you ever see interference. But I guess at the same time, should we really be surprised, given that this is what this group does? And if they didn't do it, well, then I think that would go against everything that this group has been able to do for Roman, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense unless they were just outright banned from ringside by Adam Pearce or something. That they wouldn't help Roman, because that's what they've done. It wouldn't be true to the story if they didn't. So I also understand that side of it. But I mean, so I looked at this match, and I have been harping on this for hundreds of days, and I said this to everybody. They're not going to get this close to 1,000 days and abandon it. It's 95% of the way. They aren't going to abandon it for Cody Rhodes, and people didn't want to hear it. Now, that said, it's not to make myself the smartest person in the room, because I'll be honest, in this match, there was a moment, and maybe I'll ask you the same thing about this particular moment, that I believed, oh crap, Cody is probably going to win here. And that moment was when Sami and Kevin interfered, and they both hit their finish on Roman. They hit the stunner, which then Sami got a piece of Roman and hit the haluva kick after they were already through like 80% of their match. That, oh crap, this could be it, because at that moment the referee came to, and Roman gave the best kick out of all time, which was the most pathetic, weak, just, half-hearted kick out you've ever seen. It was perfect. I don't mean that as a complaint. It was perfect for the moment. But I believed in that moment that was the potential Cody victory. I don't know. How did you feel about that particular moment?
I thought it was an amazing moment, an amazing kick out. I wasn't as sold on it ending the match as you, just because I wasn't expecting Cody Rhodes, the babyface, to win off of outside interference, directly because of outside interference. Getting the win off of two other people's finisher, I just don't think is something that they would have wanted to. But that being said, after the interference by Sami and Kevin, I was sold that I thought Cody was going to win. And when he hit the back-to-back crossroads, I was just like, okay, here it is. This is when it's going to just come all to fruition here. It's going to take 3 consecutive finishers to put Roman down, put him to finally bury this thing. And obviously coming off of the 2 finishers hit by Sami and Kevin just moments before. And when Solo kind of came up on the apron, that's when I knew, okay, that's it. That's a good night the lights for Cody Rhodes. But there were times where they had me thinking and scared from my perspective, because as we just broke down, I'm not a Cody Rhodes fan in the least. But I was really frightened that Cody Rhodes was going to walk away with the championship. And that's a good thing, right? Like, you do want some unpredictability. Like, remember last year's Mania where we all knew and everyone's grandmother knew that Brock Lesnar was going to drop the WWE championship to Roman Reigns? Like, this one, you come in and I think the vast majority of people legitimately thought that Cody Rhodes was going to walk away with the championships here. Like, I was more in line with you because of the 1,000 days. Like, you're just so close. Like, why are you going to do this now? And when the Usos, lost their championships the night before, like, there's just so much more story to be told now that Roman has the titles and they don't. Like, all the friction between them is obviously going to escalate because of that. And, Roman Reigns said something in his press conference that, we're only in the 3rd inning here. And again, I'll eat my words too. Like, last summer, I was saying, like, how much more can you drag this on for? But the more that they go here and post Sami Zayn, and we've said this before, that Sami Zayn just completely breathed new life into the Bloodline story, it really does feel like you could stretch this like arguably another 12 months because of like what's going to happen with the Bloodline, what is going to happen with, Roman Reigns' dual championships. Are they going to split the titles? Now that we're into maybe like the post-WrestleMania season, do they want to get a world championship back on Raw? Like, it just, yes, there were moments where it felt like Cody Rhodes was going to seal the victory, like you alluded to. But when you just kept thinking about the grand scheme of things, it just made so much more sense to keep the belts on Roman.
Yeah, that's the thing, because in the moment you're thinking, oh, you're excited as a fan of Cody. Those of us that aren't, had different feelings. But if you're believing that Cody could win, and there were certainly a lot of them, those are the moments you hung on to and that you believed he could, and that got you the most excited. And then, the realization of Roman retaining sunk in. But even when you take a macro look at this, if you like Cody, you have to look at this not just from a creative standpoint. I've said this before on my last 2 shows, my 2 WrestleMania review shows, that you need to look at this from a business perspective too. As WWE being a business, they're not just here to provide great theater, right? That's what they do, but they're doing that to make money. And when they have a group that is this hot, a storyline that has been consistently hot, and they are the top selling merchandise in the store, in WWE shop, and across the world, you don't just disintegrate this because, well, fans are getting tired of seeing them on TV. Like, some fans, and there may be a significant amount of them, are upset. They're tired of it. We've heard it. I understand it. But when you look at this from dollars and cents and take the creative out of it, it makes complete sense that they would keep the belt on Roman if he's continuing to pump money into the organization. When you look at ratings minute by minute, Roman continues to top the charts. When you look at the match quality that he's had, it continues to be top notch when he does wrestle. He continues to sell the most merchandise. Like, you go down the list and look at the numbers and the metrics. He is topping the charts in everything. The group is topping the charts. They are the most discussed storyline. It's most like, so regardless of creative, even if you don't like it and you're tired of it and you just want someone to change, well, are you changing just for change's sake to create a shock and a buzz? Or are you looking at this in long term, which is what Triple H is clearly doing, not being tempted by the Sammy win in Montreal, not being tempted by the Cody win at WrestleMania, and just staying the course and milking this story and milking this program and Roman as champion as long as they can to squeeze all the money they can out of it. I can't fault them for that.
Yeah, and the other part about this is, and I've been thinking about it, because of how popular they are from a monetary and business perspective, it's like, do you think that maybe they're going to want to squeeze the juice out of the bloodline as baby faces eventually?
Yeah, maybe we're only seeing just a part of the heel version. But what about a babyface version of the bloodline? And we all know that's going to be, I mean, right, true. We almost saw it happen with Sammy turning the bloodline babyface over the summer and into the fall. I mean, they were becoming entertaining. Roman wasn't hated as much. They were cheering like crazy when Roman came out. So there was a moment, although brief, maybe a few weeks to maybe a month or two, where the bloodline was kind of de facto babyface. We got a preview of it, but to answer your question, yeah, I mean, like, there is also money to be made with them as babyfaces. Now, just because they're as hot as they are as heels now and still selling as much merchandise as they are even as heels, does that mean they're going to be as successful or more successful as babyfaces? That's speculative. So I would, if I was WWE, just get every last dime I can out of them as heels, and then hope that when the babyface turn happens for the group and for Roman, that the fans continue to pump money into them. And that's why I don't believe that they should completely disband the bloodline. There's just too much money in it. Even as a babyface or heel or whatever happens with Jey Uso down the line, like, they can never just fully disband this group. I don't think that it's a good solution long term. I mean, look at how much money they're pulling in. So I'm just trying to change people's perspective from, because we all talk about creative. You and I always talk about creative, but I think if you give people a perspective of money, dollars and cents, that's what they're here for, even though they say they're here to just serve us. Well, we're the ones pumping the money into the organization, keeping you alive. So I don't know. All right.
Well, it's one of the it's kind of similar to probably why and I didn't watch it way back then, but like why WCW kept going with the NWO, right? Because of merchandise, because of popularity, because even though people will, B-word and complain about creative at times, they will still buy the merch. They will still give major reactions when they come out in the arenas. They'll still go out of their ways to watch certain pay-per-views when they are competing. Like, they just main evented back-to-back nights, the tag team championships, and then Roman with the undisputed championship. And, like, thinking about what we spoke about last week with our fantasy booking, that question all the way to SummerSlam, given what Gunther did last night, do you not think that it kind of supports our theory? And then we just talk about what could the bloodline be as baby faces. Like, imagine, and I think we kind of broke it down exactly this way last week, but like, imagine a heel Gunther squashing Roman Reigns, humbling him, and then that in turn turns Roman Reigns babyface, and then you have a heel Imperium against a babyface bloodline. Like, just that is a whole can of worms that I would love to see.
And that just kind of reinforces my point that you should not disband the bloodline completely. You could have someone kind of go away, rebel against the leader, the head of the table, have a match, lose, whatever. Like, and you can have some fun with that, and there's money to be made in that, specifically Jey Uso, as we all know. Maybe Solo at one point too, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying, is this group is money, whether it's babyface or heel. A heel Imperium group versus a babyface bloodline group. I mean, that's also, like you said, that's money to be made, ready and waiting whenever they want. And Gunther did an interview, I think it was with BT Sport or something, Ariel Hawani, I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah.
Where he did an interview and saying, where do you see yourself at WrestleMania 40, which we all need to start looking at now. And he said main event, the main event of WrestleMania. And that's his goal. And I absolutely think he could do it. If Gunther's not in the main event of WrestleMania next year, I mean, I'll be shocked, because he is on a trajectory that I don't think anybody, even in the most optimistic projections, thought he would be in right now. He is just putting on just unbelievable, and I guess that's a great transition into the triple threat match here for the IC title, that this was as physical, even more physical than I think most people thought it would be, with the chops. And when you have somebody bleed through their skin because you're hitting them, slapping them, do you know how hard and how many times you'd have to hit someone to do that? I mean, it's really just unbelievable. I mean, you can't fake that. That's real pain. That's real blood. And the blisters and the bruises and everything else that all three men have are just, I don't envy any of their bodies this morning, but they all killed it. And Gunther specifically retaining, you and I think would agree, the absolute, the only outcome you could really have in that match was Gunther retaining. It was the right call, but Gunther in the main event of WrestleMania and WrestleMania 40 next year, I mean, I don't know how you don't do it.
I think that this is the guy that he screams all the things that, or radiates rather, all the things that you're looking for in someone to dethrone Roman Reigns. Because, I mean, obviously, if you go into the NXT pool, I'm not all that familiar with it. I know Braun Breaker's like the top dog down there, I believe. If he isn't anymore, I apologize. I do not watch NXT at all. But like from a main roster perspective, he's really the only guy. Like maybe Austin Theory, but clearly Triple H thought he was getting pushed far too fast under Vince McMahon, which I would agree. And since losing the Money in the Bank briefcase and having kind of like a course correction and a change of character, I think he's better than he's ever been. And I just think that Gunther is the one guy right now that has everything that you're looking for in potentially dethroning Roman Reigns. And he's someone that clearly WWE sees a lot of potential in. Triple H sang his praises at the press conference last night. And look, he's instantly made the Intercontinental Championship feel more prestigious than I don't even know when. On like maybe The Miz back in 2016, 2017, he did an excellent job in that regard. But even The Miz didn't carry the same cachet, which is crazy to think, right? Like the tenure of The Miz compared to how long Gunther's been around. But like he didn't even carry the same cachet, in my opinion, as Gunther did. Like Gunther just brings a legitimacy and a throwback feel to that Intercontinental title and like kind of what it used to mean back 20, 25 years ago, and the importance of it and how special that match felt last night. And two former world champions in Sheamus and McIntyre killing themselves for the Intercontinental Championship. And there are certain times where you say, like, how many more options are you going to have to dethrone Roman Reigns? Like I heard someone say, you passed on Drew in Wales, you passed on Sammy in Montreal, you passed on Cody at WrestleMania. And those are all, I guess, from objective standpoints, legitimate options and legitimate scenarios to have ended Roman Reigns' run as the undisputed champion. But if you have to pay it off with Gunther in the end, and given his status in the company and given his age and given the tread still left on his tires compared to the other ones and the runway left in his career, maybe it will all be worth it. But aside from Gunther, I can't see any option or any wrestler that would be a better fit to dethrone Roman Reigns.
I mean, the only other person, as you and I have said for so long, Seth Rollins is believable. I wouldn't hate it. There's an unfinished story with Seth and Roman, and they haven't had an interaction since the Rumble of 2022, so it's been over a year, so like 15 months or so since they've had a match, and where Seth was left laying, they never followed up on that. So if Seth is the one to do it, I wouldn't hate it. I think Seth, my God, does he need to be in the main event picture at some point too? And I think he's getting frustrated. He also did an interview with Ariel, and my God, I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how he gets all these interviews. I mean, he is just he came out of like nowhere for me, and all of a sudden he's this dude that's just interviewing everyone. The Rock, Austin. I mean, he's got everybody. But he did an interview. Seth did with BT Sport, and he had basically said in so many words that he's frustrated he's not in the main event, and that Cody came in and did his own little project and came back and he's just shoehorned into the main event. And Seth is like, I've been the one in here day in, day out for 10 years and I'm not in the main event. I mean, he wasn't in character. It was just the man speaking, and it's true. Like, so I feel for Seth. I do. But back to Gunther, if the plan is to ultimately get Gunther over and him be the one to dethrone Roman, like, bring it on. I mean, I'll be willing to go to WrestleMania 40 until that time, because I have no faith in The Rock. I'm done talking about him until I hear his music. So assuming that that's out, we have Gunther versus Roman. But the question is, like, who's babyface, who's heel, right? Because right now they're both heel, even though Gunther as a heel makes no sense. Or why people boo him really makes no sense, as you and I have said, and those that maybe haven't heard. Our argument is he respects the championship. His whole mission is to bring respect back to the championship, to bring respect back to pro wrestling. He doesn't cheat to win. So I don't understand why people boo him. Is it because he doesn't have a flashy entrance, or he's from another country, he's the foreign invader? Well, I got news for you. So were the other two men in the Intercontinental Championship match last night. None of them are U.S. born. So we all supposed to hate everyone that's from a different country? Like, so I don't know. When you look at it, I just, because he looks like he's a mean man. I don't know. I don't understand why people have just kind of taken to him as a heel. He gets big reactions, but man, bring it on. If Gunther's the ultimate conclusion, sign me up.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on here before we call it a night, what about the sale today? How big of an impact do you think it's going to have on everything, if at all?
So based on what Triple H came out to say tonight, it was kind of like calming the nerves or uncertainty of fans and to the shareholders and stakeholders. Was all is well. Things aren't going to change. We may have a new owner, but management's going to remain the same largely, and that we're going to be business as usual. We're going to be in here day in, day out. The same WWE that you love and you watch and you pour your money into isn't going anywhere. We aren't changing anything. So I mean, that remains to be seen if that does happen. I would imagine that everything, the way that it's working now and the way that the TV product isn't going to change really at all, because why would you mess with a formula that's working and working very well right now? So what do I think it means for on air? Not a whole lot. What do I think it means behind the scenes? Probably a change of management with some areas and change of staff, and that's from an administrative standpoint. The stuff that's invisible to fans probably is going to change a little, but from an on-air creative, Paul Levesque is remaining in charge of creative. Vince is, I'm sure you saw this too with his really odd mustache. I mean, that could be a story in and of itself. I don't know. I don't understand the mustache. It's very bizarre. But Vince was asked directly about, hey, are you involved in creative, or are you going to be with this sale? And he said yes and no, meaning at a high level, he's going to have some input, but not in the weeds, which is basically translated to, yeah, I have some creative input, but I don't have like the kind of intricacies of, how something happens or when it happens. I just get the general overview of big things that are going to happen, and I have input. That's the way I read it. So what's your take?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, when he said like the big stuff, it does make sense. And like, look, are we all that surprised? Like, I don't think that he's back in the weeds as he used it. But there were some things that did seem very Vince-esque en route to WrestleMania, specifically Brock versus Omos. But I don't think that he's at a stage right now where he's going to be, in Gorilla at Monday Night Raw or SmackDown and booking like, the third match on the card on a weekly show. Like, I don't think that he's at that point. But I mean, for a guy who's the executive chairman of the company, and now I think he's the executive chairman of whatever the new company is going to be that will own both UFC and WWE. Like, I think he just has bigger fish to fry. But if you're going to Saudi Arabia, one of the most lucrative events of the year for WWE, I can't see why he wouldn't have a bigger say in creative, or at least his input, and, you know, maybe nudge Triple H in a specific direction. I don't think it's the end of the world like people may make it out to be, because if you think about it, like, even when Vince had full creative control, the bigger events typically were still decent. Like, yeah, the B-level pay-per-views, the Raws and SmackDowns from a weekly perspective were not the best. But, like, you look at WrestleMania last year, aside from the main event and the decision to put both titles on Roman Reigns, which I do think has aged well with time, that was a very good WrestleMania. And most bigger shows, even under Vince, in my opinion, were good shows most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. So I don't think it's the end of the world as long as Vince stays true to the insinuation that he meant.
I'm going to take him at his word. I mean, for anyone really to speculate, he's BS and he's lying, he's really going to be fine. Then like, stress yourself out, right? Like, knock yourself out, get angry about it. Maybe he is lying. I don't know. The thing is, as fans, long-term fans, we are very sensitive to what Vince McMahon has his fingers on because we know his style. We know his sense of humor. It froze at the age of 14. We understand what he finds funny. We understand what kind of matches he likes and the promos he likes and the way that the cameras are and all this stuff. Like, we know. Like, so, in other words, if something looks like Vince and smells like Vince, it's probably Vince having a little bit of a say in whatever that particular storyline is or angle or shot on on camera. So that's probably going to happen from time to time, and we're just going to have to accept it. But I also, as you said, I'll just take Vince at his word. I don't want to speculate that he's lying and he's really going to be involved day to day and Triple H is just a prop being used to make it look like they're not actually, changing back to Vince with creative and it's still Paul Levesque's in charge, guys, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And just to, not send an uproar of fans to Stamford, Connecticut, that, oh my God, Triple H was doing so great. How could you put Vince back in charge? I mean, is it possible that's the case? Sure. But look, I've got bigger things in my life to worry about than, worrying about if Triple H is in charge of creative. I'm going to take them at their face value. And if it turns out down the line that we find out Vince was actually running things while Paul Levesque was just kind of the puppet, fine. I mean, then we can talk about it. But any more thoughts on this? Because I definitely want to talk about the Charlotte Rhea match with you.
No, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to get my 2 cents in on a little bit.
Cool. Awesome. So, well, give it to me. What'd you think about this match, Charlotte and Rhea Ripley? I'm imagining it's exceeded expectations for you?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, as much as I liked the tag team match the first night, and as much as I can appreciate why it went on last, I think that this was deserving of it. And maybe not even so much for Charlotte, but just because of how big of a star Rhea was. And, I think that if it wasn't for Roman Reigns, and look, I get it, why they're pushing him so much and why he was the ultimate main event of both shows, I think Rhea's on a trajectory right now where she could arguably have main evented WrestleMania on her own. And she could have closed the entire weekend holding up the SmackDown Women's Championship. And, maybe I'm getting a bit too overzealous here, but I think that had they decided to go with Bianca versus Rhea Ripley and built it properly and not kind of had just left Bianca Belair toying in the wind, because I know she's very stale right now, but she's still an incredible talent, and there's just so much talent there, both from a character and a physical perspective. I think that they almost have an opportunity for the first time to build like a Rock versus Austin type of feel, but for the women. Because even when Becky was as red hot as she was, or when Charlotte was first coming into her own, or the early months of Ronda Rousey where she came in with all that legitimacy, I never felt that they had that star, maybe not star power is the right word, but like that legitimate badass feel like Bianca has and Rhea has. And Rhea specifically right now, because of the trajectory she's been on, an astronomical one at that, going back to last summer, and the performance she put on with Charlotte on Saturday. And, look, I do think that maybe they will rue the day they decide to go Charlotte versus Rhea, although I understand why they did it, and Charlotte showed us why they did it, because she is such a consistently A-plus worker in every type of big match scenario. It really showcased the talent that Rhea Ripley is. We knew it from a character perspective, and now we saw it from an in-ring perspective and on a major stage. And we know that, didn't she beat Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship? What was it, 2 years ago or last year? I forget when it was. But this really felt like her crowning achievement and her coming out party and her arrival in the main event, and that she isn't going anywhere. The only thing I would say is that they really have to capitalize on her versus Bianca at some point. And on a side note, they have some very big work to do in making Bianca feel as important as Rhea right now. And in her own right, I think that she has the talent to do it. I really do think that where she's at right now is a creative problem and not a superstar problem. So it's nothing against Bianca as a wrestler, but focusing in on Ripley here, I really think there is a case to be made that not only she should have cemented herself as the main event of night one, but you could have made the case for night two as well.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, these two women, I think you could make an argument it was better than Cody and Roman because it wasn't as overbooked. It was clean, no interference, just two women who are badasses killing each other out there and have better chemistry than I remember or that anyone could have ever expected. Now, to say that they, should have main evented, well, see, as Paul Levesque said in his press conference, and someone asked him that, why was the decision for Kevin and Sami versus the Usos over Rhea Ripley and Charlotte? And he basically said storyline. I mean, and I totally agree with him. And even in hindsight, I understand, and it was a much hotter story than Charlotte and Rhea. Much better. It was much more emotional for most fans and everything else, and the attachment that they have with Sami Zayn is incredible, and same with Kevin. So, that I totally understand why they would make that the main event of night one. Now, the thing is, every match, the main event of a show doesn't need to always be the best wrestling match on the show. You may look back and go, oh, they could have closed the show with that, and they absolutely could with Charlotte and Rhea. But the main event isn't always dictated by who could have the best match. If it happens, great. It's a great side effect, but people are invested in the story. It's always about the emotion. And who would have possibly known that Rhea and Charlotte would have had that good of a match? I expected a solid to very good match. I did not expect this to be one of the matches that you will probably remember for a very long time. And you could look back and go, that was the staple signature victory for Rhea that really launched her to the next level. And she's 26 years old, as Triple H said, which you keep needing to be reminded of because she wears so much makeup. She looks older, but when she takes it off, she looks so much younger. So eventually I think she'll strip the dark makeup at some point in her career. But she's so young that think about the future she's got ahead of her. And she's this good, this young. I mean, it's so exciting if you're a Rhea Ripley fan. But yeah, I mean, these two women, I really can't remember being this emotionally invested in a women's storyline, even more so than I was with Becky and Ronda at WrestleMania 35 with Charlotte. This to me was just absolutely a delight. It reminds you why you love pro wrestling. Physical. I thought Charlotte killed herself. I really thought she was dead a couple of times with just landing literally face first. Didn't protect herself. And you can't fake that stuff. I mean, Charlotte absolutely killed herself. And what was kind of an interesting moment that I have mixed feelings on was Charlotte sitting outside the ring. And I think Sasha Banks did this too when she lost to Bianca Belair a couple of years ago at WrestleMania, where they sit on the side of the ring after the match is over and they're smiling, but it's a genuine excitement, like a smile and a feeling of elation for that person in the ring who won. It's kind of like a mutual respect thing, kind of peeking behind the curtain on camera. And I have mixed feelings about that, but Charlotte did the same thing for Rhea Ripley, seeming genuinely happy for her in that moment.
Well, I mean, it's a coming out party for Rhea Ripley, which is crazy to say because 3 years ago she faced Charlotte at WrestleMania, albeit in front of nobody, but she still wasn't a major match at WrestleMania. Then 2 years ago she wins the Raw Women's Championship, but the story was so bland and the Raw Women's Championship was just so obscure at that time that it didn't really feel like it meant anything. And then she becomes, I believe, the tag team champions with Nikki ASH, and then it was only when she got into the Judgment Day that she just really took off and went on this meteoric rise over the last 11 months or so and just has not looked back in any capacity. And that's a testament to her. And I guess Charlotte knew that it was a crowning moment. And look, like, I was even thinking about this the other day. Like, we always like to consider Becky Lynch and Bayley and Charlotte as like newer wrestlers, but they've been on the main roster now for almost 8 years, in the company for almost 10. So they're not spring chickens either. And now you have a legitimate main eventer in Rhea. You already had a legitimate main eventer in Bianca. And if we're being honest here, like maybe with the exception of Charlotte Flair, like I think from an in-ring perspective, Bianca and Rhea blow the aforementioned women out of the water. What do you think?
I think so too. Yeah, this is, as you mentioned at the beginning here, this is the coming out party for Rhea. I mean, and I tweeted this out, and I think it's a good way to explain what happened here in very short order. Is Rhea Ripley has arrived. I mean, if you thought she was here before, like she is now here to stay. I love the hashtag Mommy Mania. That was kind of a fun little play on WrestleMania. Yeah, I mean, I think also, as you mentioned, Bianca and Rhea, they have to get to this matchup, right? Like, I think it would. Here's who needs it more: Bianca Belair, who is ice cold as Raw Women's Champion. Great, she went from WrestleMania to WrestleMania as champion, wonderful. But like this match with Asuka, it was fine, it was good, okay. But when you compare it to Rhea and Charlotte, I mean, no, it wasn't anywhere near it. But Rhea and Bianca need to clash. I would say maybe even at Money in the Bank in the O2 Arena, big stage, all right, Money in the Bank, good place to do it. Or Saudi Arabia. I mean, they could do it at the end of May, but that's going to be really focused on Roman's 1000th day that falls on that pay-per-view, so that'll be a whole nother discussion at some point. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I need to see Bianca and Rhea. The problem is, though, that the bar has been set so damn high by Charlotte and Rhea in this match. You're never going to be able to duplicate what they've done. As great as Bianca is and great as Rhea is, sometimes even when you put the main event players together, magic doesn't always happen. Something off that night, just the chemistry just isn't there, whatever it may be. But all right, well, in the interest of time, there's a couple more topics I want to get to before we wrap it up. First, Shane McMahon. I got to ask you, kind of in a bit of a lighthearted I guess break here in the action. What did you think? Did you expect him to even be there? That shocked me.
Yeah, it shocked me because all we heard was after the Rumble in 2022 that he would never be back in WWE. And, I was thinking for a while that, like, man, it must be so weird for him to have quite literally, like, no say, whether it be behind the scenes or on screen in the company that his family built. And then lo and behold, he shows up at WrestleMania for what we thought would be a match against The Miz, and he blows out his quad in, under a minute. And, I mean, it sucks. I've always been a huge Shane McMahon mark, so I was happy to see him. But it was unfortunate because clearly he had trained for this. He was clearly in good shape. I did actually find that he seemed gassed when he got on the microphone before the match even started. So I was just like, maybe like he's been in good gym shape, but not really in good ring shape because he did seem like his cardio was lacking. And lo and behold, he blows out his quad. But it was unfortunate, but I mean, good to see him nonetheless and hope for a speedy recovery.
Well, somebody had also made the analogy that when Vince blew out his quads on his way, so like that's kind of ironic, I guess, with Vince and one of the funniest moments, and I think it was Rumble 05 when Vince blew out his quads. So Shane does it, 18 years later, whatever it is. And I felt for him too. At first I thought it was a work because Snoop Dogg comes in and throws some, kind of bad punches and does a really embarrassing people's elbow, and I'm like, was this the story? And then obviously it's not. It was just kind of an improv, and good for Snoop, okay?
Yeah.
It's good for him. I mean, it was embarrassing from the perspective of all the great wrestling we've seen to see a celebrity come in and just kind of like play, just kind of do a little fake kind of stuff. I wasn't a fan of it, but I totally am with Snoop. I have nothing bad to say about it now because what are you supposed to do in the moment? Do nothing? So I applaud Snoop for that. But I felt for Shane. Absolutely. I mean, he got a great reaction. I never thought I'd see him again. And, he was gassed, but that's kind of what Shane is. Like, I mean, even I remember him coming out on SmackDown when he was a commissioner or GM, and he's always sweating no matter what he's doing. He's just like always pouring sweat, and he always feels like he's out of breath. But I'm sure that ramp that was a half mile long didn't help either. But yeah, no, so I hope Shane recovers. Maybe we'll see him back. Maybe we won't. I don't know what the long-term plans were. Maybe it was a one-off. Who knows? All right. Well, we only have a few minutes left here, so I'll toss it to you and ask you, because I know there's a ton of other matches and topics we didn't talk about, but, the floor is yours.
Well, all I wanted to say was I think that I was super negative going into this WrestleMania until the last week. And now I'm very positive, which is kind of weird for me because I remember following last year's WrestleMania, I was very disconnected and disinterested from the product. And as we remember, Roman Reigns, I believe, he took like a 2-month hiatus. And the first time we saw him defend the Undisputed Championship, I believe was against a Riddle, if I'm not mistaken, on SmackDown in June. And then by the time that we got to SummerSlam, he had only defended it 3 times since WrestleMania. But it feels different this year. It feels like they have a legitimate outline planned in terms of where they're going with this thing for the foreseeable future, as opposed to last year. And I believe I said this 12 months ago, that it felt like they planned for a massive blowout at WrestleMania. The biggest, what were they phrasing that to main event? The biggest match of all time with Brock and Roman, something crazy like that. Just an absolute foolish description of what that match was. And then once they got there, they had the big payoff with Roman winning with both titles, and then they had no idea where to go. And it kind of radiated and came through on the programming and the television. Doesn't feel that way this year. It feels like there is a clear-cut destination. They have a clear idea to where this thing is going. And I just think that the early-on story with the Usos and how Solo Sikoa is always right beside Roman Reigns now. I'm really hook, line, and sinker right now, and something I never thought I would say 12 months ago.
And that was the goal, right? Going in, I with you. I wasn't as excited. I got a little more excited towards the beginning, or towards the show when it was about to, happen on Saturday night. But I would agree that I think most fans were in that same boat. Not super excited. The star power wasn't exactly, through the roof. We didn't get any Rock. We didn't get even Austin coming out to deliver a few stunners, which I'm surprised about that. We didn't get LA Knight, and I was kind of disappointed about that, and not having him on the card at all was a bit surprising, even in a kind of passing backstage segment or something, unless I missed it. But so the star power was down. No big time returns. Just kind of your straightforward WrestleMania. But what saved this pay-per-view, and what I think really was brought things back to basics, is WWE, Triple H put the wrestle back in WrestleMania. I mean, I can't think of a better way to put it. I mean, he made this and really allowed the talent to breathe in their matches, giving them enough time. And the outcomes of they're predetermined, but the story getting to that destination is up to the talent, and they are the ones who I also have to give the most credit to, because they're the ones and the reasons why you and I and other fans generally, I think, are feeling this way of, wow, that really blew my expectations out of the water. It's because not necessarily the storylines were strong. Some were, but it's because generally the talent kicked ass and killed themselves out there and put on matches that you think to yourself, where the hell is this every Monday and Friday night? And I know they can't pull out all the stops, but you're just seeing some of these matches and you're like, can you do some of this like on a Monday or Friday, and it seems like some of them bottled it all up and just poured it out on a Saturday or Sunday night here. So I really got to give the talent all the credit in the world, and Triple H for almost all of the booking he had on at WrestleMania, I would have booked myself in terms of the finishes, who wins. I really think they did what's right, not necessarily what the fans wanted in the moment, and I really enjoyed the show a lot.
I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed most of the creative. Yes, there were some things that I nitpicked on, like the overbooking or what have you of the main event. But I like the overall direction right now. I think they have a lot of good young talent and main event caliber talent in terms of Gunther. I mean, even a guy like Cody Rhodes, I'm not a fan of him from an objective standpoint or from a subjective standpoint. I don't have any interest in him being a world champion and more specifically ending Roman Reigns' streak. But I can objectively say that he does have main event level talent in the ring, promo ability, whether or not I dislike his character. So, I mean, they're in a good spot. And I think that Triple H's creative has, for the most part, been very good. I think his long-term storytelling has been excellent, as showcased with the Bloodline story. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the aftermath with the Usos, because we still haven't really seen them interact verbally yet. So, I mean, it's going to be fun here. And I wonder who the next man up is going to be for Roman Reigns. And you look at like the next several pay-per-views in Puerto Rico, overseas in Saudi Arabia. Then they have the stadium show. Is it in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, for Money in the Bank? Yeah. So, I mean, they have like 3 very big level pay-per-views. Like, it's like, and look, obviously this is a pandemic era, but like, I just remember like post WrestleMania 36, where you had like or what was it, Backlash, the greatest wrestling match of all time, or whatever dumb
Randy and Edge, yeah.
Yep. Randy and Edge, and then they had Extreme Rules, the horror show, or Money in the Bank in WWE headquarters. And I give them a pass, right, because they were trying different things in the pandemic era, and they get carte blanche from me just for trying to entertain people while we were all going through a living hell in real life. But I mean, like, the difference from like then, or even other shows, like, or other eras where, post Seth Rollins winning the Universal Championship in 2019, right, before the pandemic hit, like, all those like post Mania shows felt so bland and dull when he was feuding with Corbin, and then you had the mixed tag team match with Becky against Corbin and Lacey Evans. Like, Kofi was champion. Like, it just felt so dull and boring and not significant. It was just like everyone was treading water and to get to SummerSlam until we knew that maybe there was a possibility that something big would happen. It doesn't feel that way right now. It feels like almost like a must watch, at least from a SmackDown point of view of things. And that's what I'm liking.
Yeah, very good. I mean, thinking back to the pandemic era, it is a nightmare. I have no interest in ever going back and watching it voluntarily, just because, not necessarily that everything was bad, it's just awkward, and it brings back bad memories of obviously all of us and our personal lives, and most of us didn't enjoy that time. And yeah, they did the best they could, and a lot of time, that is when we needed them the most, to take our minds off of things. And it was a weird time, a very weird time. And you could do a whole podcast on just the pandemic era and break it down week by week, and all the awkwardness that ensued. And that said, though, yeah, I mean, I think that they are on a good path, to kind of put a bow on this here. I think they are on a good path generally, especially in the main event. And boy, they must have a hell of a storyline to keep Roman champion this long, just beyond, let's just make him champion as long as we can. I mean, I'm sure they have a finale at least in mind. And I have said this before, and I'll say it again, though, that the 1,000 days is the driving force. And now that they're coming up on only 50 days ish until they pass that, I think the finale of that 1,000 days ends in Saudi Arabia at that event. And after that, to me, then it's kind of, you've crossed the finish line for Roman, and anything is fair game. After that 1,000 days, after the end of May, I think that we could look at every match as, wow, he could drop it here. They passed 1,000 days. Yeah, I think it's possible. It becomes increasingly, exponentially more likely he'll drop it after the 1,000 days. They can get, the documentary. I know film crews are already following him around on like a daily basis. So there's a massive documentary, I'm sure, that's being filmed as we speak with Roman Reigns. And, that said, I'm excited to see where they're going with the mini storylines with Jay and Jimmy. How does Roman react to them when they lost their belts? I'm sure he'll berate them and say all the things that are just disrespectful, and that they've brought shame to the family, and that they're putting more stress on him. He has to really carry the load for the family now. He'll make it all about himself, as he does in brilliant ways, and that's going to be fun to watch, the dynamic, and slowly the ice breaking until it shatters between Jay and Roman's going to be fun to watch. Big returns tonight. Maybe we'll see a big return tonight with Randy Orton, who has unfinished business with the Bloodline too. Or maybe my insane story of Brock Lesnar joining the Bloodline happens tonight. I doubt it, but all the players are in the ring tonight, and Brock's having a match, so who the hell knows? There's just so many things you can do, which is just continues to reinforce my belief of why they kept the belt on Roman. There's just too many stories and great stories to tell still with him as champion, so.
Yeah, no, I'm all with you on that. And Brock joining the Bloodline, that'd be something. It would be pretty cool. It'd be different.
I'm just thinking of the 2-man power trip. Like that can't get out of my head with Triple H and Stone Cold in 02. So, or 01. That I think was a storyline that was totally undersold. So, anyway, probably won't happen. Not saying it's going to happen, but it's fun to think about. So, all right, well, that'll wrap it up here for us on the current state of WWE, guys. I know we didn't hit on every match. It's impossible here. We had a limited amount of time, but still, it was a blast. And I know this week that you'll be returning with your retro show, and I don't know if you have a topic picked out, but certainly no shortage of things if you wanted to.
Yeah, like you have topics in your head, and then like WrestleMania passes or Monday Night Raw or whatever, and then you get pulled in different directions. And I believe that obviously we didn't record last week because we don't on pay-per-view weeks. But the last time, I had something else lined up completely, and then the day before I just started thinking about Edge because of his booking into the Hell in a Cell, and I started thinking about how he got to the main event in the first place. I said, okay, I got to do this, and I'll shelve the other ones for a rainy day. So, what I like about retro is that, contrary to my last show, the original version, which was Rivalries, is that retro you could go any which way. Like, you could cover old superstars, specific eras of specific superstars, pay-per-views, time frames, championships. So, the possibilities are endless, and I haven't narrowed in on one yet. But I do think that I will come up with something that people will like.
No doubt. You always do, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And boy, even though WrestleMania is over, it feels like things have just begun again. So, with possible call-ups tonight and call-ups on SmackDown from NXT or big returns and all that, and there's things aren't cooling off. I know it's post-Mania now, and you get past this week, things are just starting to heat up as we look towards big stadium events this summer, and then the all-important WrestleMania 40 build that's going to take place sooner than later. So thank you so much for coming on tonight, buddy, and we will be chatting in a week.
Yeah, man. Talk then.
All right, take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.